Have you ever felt lost staring at what used to be your life, wondering what to do next? Well, in this episode, it's called The Messy Middle Between Separation and Divorce. And alongside me is Josie. She's an expert in this area. She's also a life coach and the host of Devastation to Divorce.
Step into the world of Inspired by Cyndia, a mental health life coach with a podcast dedicated to mental health and life coaching. Cyndia is here to ignite your inner spark and accompany you on the path to embracing your authentic self. Together, you'll set out on a journey to uncover the stories of remarkable individuals who have left a lasting mark on her. So, brace yourself for a sprinkle of inspiration that will light up your life.
Welcome to Inspire by Cyndia. I'm your host, Cyndia, and I am so excited that I have Josie here today. Josie, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. I'm just so excited and ready to dive right into it. I've that you have all the answers.
Well, maybe not all of them, but a few.
Okay, I would love to hear about it. Can you introduce yourself and
Absolutely. So, hello, my name is Josie. I am the host of the From Devastated to Divorced podcast. It's a podcast for women that are dealing with unwanted separation. I'm also a separation survival specialist, helping these women work through the messy middle between separation and divorce.
what caused you to want to start a podcast and start sharing your story with the world?
Well, I did survive my own unwanted separation, um, and it was an extremely challenging time for me. There was a lot that I had to rebuild my life and deal with a lot of things, and one of the things that I did was I started a journal while I was going through the process. It kind of helped me not send nasty emails or text messages to the ex. I could just write what I wanted, in my journal and get everything off my chest. And so it was something that I would revisit every once in a while just to see how far I had come. And so during COVID, I decided that I wanted to turn those journal entries into a podcast, which I would read the journal entries and talk about what I remember feeling during that time and what I've learned along the way so that other women going through the situation could hear that and maybe not feel so alone. And so I basically started the podcast like that. And after a couple years doing that and getting a lot of great feedback, I decided to step into actually coaching these women in getting through their separation journey. And so the podcast evolved. It changed a little. It got a new name and a new branding, and that's how I ended up where I am today.
Nice. Okay, and do you share your journal on, the old episodes, or do you just give them steps?
So no, the first two seasons were just me reading journal entries. Some of them were very raw. I cry a few times. I almost stopped the podcast a couple times because I'm like, do people really want to hear this? And I had made a promise that I was going to share the journal entries. I wasn't going to edit anything out. So there's some embarrassing things going on, especially trying to date too early and having zero self-esteem. But so yeah, the first two seasons are just journal entries. And up until last season, season 4, I was still reading journal entries every now and then. But now that I have rebranded and I've changed the focus of the podcast away from me and more towards the women that I help, I'm not reading journal entries, but I do plan on having a space where women who are following and want to know what happened can still listen to those. Just they won't be posted on the actual podcast anymore.
Nice. So, can you walk us through a little bit of what happened?
Absolutely. So, I will start by saying that I was a very confident. I had a lot of self-worth when I was growing up. I was very secure in myself. But then I met someone and I got pregnant and married in that order. And through the years of my marriage, I was a stay-at-home mom taking care of my son, which I love to do, but it changed the dynamic, obviously, of my life and my relationship. And unfortunately, in the world, stay-at-home mothers don't get the value and acknowledgement that they should. And I fell into the trap of believing it myself. And so I started losing a lot of my self-worth because I wasn't bringing in any money. I was reliant on my ex-husband to pay all the bills. I did always work, but it was small little jobs, nothing near what he would bring in, because I still had to be available for my son and for dinner and all those things. So I basically just became the wife and the mother and forgot about, Josie, the person.
Mhm.
And next thing you know, 8 years in, my husband decides that he no longer wants to be in the marriage. And I will be honest and say that, it wasn't perfect, but I believed until death do us part. And so even though it wasn't perfect, I was like, this is my life. So I was blindsided by him deciding one day that he wanted to just, end things, which he didn't really say end things. He wanted a break, but we all know what that means, really. So I found myself heartbroken, zero self worth. I didn't have any of my own money because he took care of everything. My credit was terrible again because we focused on his credit. And I had to start from scratch as a single mom. I had to move back in with my mother because I couldn't afford the house, and I didn't think that I deserved the house, again because of my low self worth. And
Mhm.
also making his life easier because I was desperate to keep the marriage. And so I was trying to be as nice as possible for him to realize, hey, what am I doing? She's great. Why am I leaving? But obviously none of that worked. Um, and so I found myself at the bottom. No money, no job, no real home of my own, taking care of my son. And the first thing that I really needed to work on was, my self worth. I needed to start. I went to therapy because I needed some external help taking the steps that I needed to start remembering the person that I was, my value, how strong I was, the things that I was able to accomplish before I just became a wife and a mother. And so slowly building myself up, taking small steps, believing that I could do it, and pushing through some really hard times. And yes, I absolutely had some support by, my mom, which let me move in with her. My ex-husband was paying child support, so I cannot complain about that. And I slowly found jobs. I went back to school and I was able to get myself a little apartment and get myself my own car and rebuild my credit. And it sounds fast and easy. It took, a few years to get from point A to point C or D, but that's what I had to do.
Yeah, and you made it.
I did, thank God.
What advice do you give women these days with dealing that in between? Let's say you don't have the man is taking care of everything,
Right.
and she's a single, not a single woman, but she's living in the home. He's taking care of everything. What advice do you give her so she won't be, if he would say, I don't want to do this anymore?
Right. Right.
What's
So
the in between?
absolutely. So now there's a couple things. I actually based on my experience and speaking to other women and my training, I created a 5-chapter journey that goes basically like my podcast is called From Devastated to Divorced, right? So that you kind of know where you're going in the steps after separation. But I do tell women that excuse me. I tell women that you should definitely not do what I did. Even if you are in a marriage that you believe is healthy, you should be having your own bank account. You should be having your own savings account. You should have money on the side that is just yours.
Mm.
because in case of an emergency, you never know what could happen in a relationship. You can expect that it's going to go on forever, that you're going to grow old and die together. That's great. Keep the money. There's always going to be something that you
Mhm.
can use it for, you know?
Right.
But if something happens, if you break up, if he dies and you don't even know how the budget is or where the money's at, you have a way to survive until you figure these things out. So, one of my biggest mistakes was not doing that, not having my own separate money. And again, if you don't work, then you take let's say if you go grocery shopping every week, take an extra $25 every week out of that grocery and put it in your savings account. Give yourself an allowance. Why the heck not? Don't be
Mhm.
ashamed or embarrassed, because that money that he's bringing in is also your money. So that is one of the first things that I tell me women before they get to the separation part. Now, after, if they are in that situation, one of my biggest advice is do not make decisions because of your feelings. Don't make decisions because you're brokenhearted, upset, in shock and disbelief, because you can really screw up your future by doing that. And what I mean by that is, for example, I left my house with my son because even though my ex was the one who wanted the separation, he didn't have any family in the city we were in. And I'm like, oh, poor guy, where's he going to go? So I packed up my son and left my house for him. And I did that because I was trying to be extra nice. I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to be mean and tell him, well, you want to break up, get out. But I could have had a conversation and said, okay, logistically, it doesn't make sense for me to move our son. So you want to take the break, you want to see how things go, go ahead. See if you can find someone to stay with. But I didn't do that because A, I had low self-worth, B, I was upset, C, I was trying to save the marriage. So don't make decisions when you are feeling emotional. Put everything off as much as possible so that you don't accidentally say, no, I don't need child support because I don't need you to take care of me. And then later be starving and hungry because you don't have any money when it is his responsibility to help pay for your child.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, I like that advice. We should be taking care of ourselves, one way or the other. So just putting a little money aside and helping yourself through situations, not leaving leaving your relationship, but just saving money for yourself and putting away for hard times and separation. I like that analogy that you use.
Absolutely.
Um,
And I know money can be a touchy subject. I hate talking money with my partner. Even still, it's an uncomfortable thing, but it's better to be uncomfortable than to be broke. So,
Yeah, what do you think a man would say about this? Because it's almost like a double-edged sword where the woman would be like, "Yeah, save the money," but the man would say, "This is not how a relationship go. You don't hide money from me."
right. And I would say, well, of course, they're not going to love it. So, first of all, don't tell them. That doesn't have to be their business. It's not like you're taking, hundreds and hundreds of dollars. You deserve to have a cushion, and you don't know if they're doing the exact same thing. And if you have a partner where he handles the bank account anyway, you don't even know what's in there. So, um you can first try the honest route and have a conversation and say, I think it's important for me to have my own savings account so that if there's money that I need for something, I don't have to keep asking you, because it's a little demeaning to me to be having to ask you, can I buy this? Can I buy that? When we're a partnership. And even though I don't bring income, I'm making sure that your children are fed, that your home is clean, that your dinner's on the table. So I think that I should have the dignity of having my own money without having to ask you for it. Start there. Hopefully a decent husband will be like, I get it. Makes sense. Absolutely. Whatever you need. And if he's not that kind, then say, okay, now you know even more how important it is to have that savings. And you take money on the side and do that.
Yeah. And are you in a relationship as of now, or?
I am now in a relationship. Yes, ma'am. I took a good 5 years to be on my own after my separation and divorce. I had a wonderful time with my son. It was, and I say this to people all the time, the best years of my life, because I went into my marriage pretty much from living with my parents. And I have Puerto Rican descent. My parents were very Puerto Rican Catholic, so I did not have hardly any freedom to do things. So the time after my separation and divorce was a wonderful time of freedom to live my life the way I wanted and not have to answer to anybody. And that was such an important time for me to recognize what I want, what I expect, what I value, so that when a new person came into my life, I could see red flags right away, because I wasn't like needy or desperate to have a relationship. And so I've been with my current partner now for longer than I was in my marriage. So it worked.
Nice. So you applied the same principles that you teach women today, just so they can have a better relationship and make their new relationship stronger?
Exactly. And my thought process is the work that you do is for yourself. It is for you to and the reason I say that is because when I met my new partner, I was at a point in my life where I had recognized and decided that I am perfectly happy to be alone. I do not need a man to complete my life. I was
Yeah.
going out to the theme parks with my dad and my aunts, and I'm like, this is cool. And then when I have my son and I go on vacation together, I don't need a man to complete me. A man would be a bonus. I have a great life, and he would bring, you know, another level of goodness to my life, but my life is not lacking without one, right? That is the goal that I want women to get to, because I'm not saying we're going to stay alone, but if we don't have the mindset that I have to have somebody, you are in a better position to find the correct somebody, instead of just letting the first guy that winks at you and seems kind of nice into your space.
Yeah. How did you build the confidence? Do you just say time caused you to build the confidence of not needing anyone?
Well, time helped. Doing a lot of reading and self-help books. I wish podcasts were a thing when I was going through in that journey. It would have been great, really great, but there were books and stuff. I had friends and a good support system. I screwed up. If you listen to my journal entries, I screwed up quite a bit. But when I screwed up, specifically in accepting very low quality men into my life just because I wanted somebody, and it would remind me, what am I doing? I would take those screw ups as lessons and recognize I am causing this to happen to myself. And so I would journal, I would analyze. It was a lot of work on myself, and acknowledging that I'm not perfect, acknowledging that I am not valuing myself, and finding ways to push through, because it's hard. You want external validation. I worked hard on validating myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And while you were going through the journey,
Hmm.
needing someone to validate you, or not needing no one to validate you,
Hmm.
writing in the journals, walk me through the process of from the weakest, feeling the weakest, and then starting to find yourself and saying, I don't need this. I'm okay by myself. I can do
Right,
this.
right. Well, um, so obviously the weakest was pretty much when my husband wanted to end the marriage, and I felt worthless, because one of the things that we do as women, and maybe some men, but I can only speak to women, is that we internalize their rejection as meaning that we are not good. I see so many women say, "What did I do? Why what did I do wrong? How did I screw this up?" And it wasn't about you. Obviously, it takes two in a relationship, but it can take two people to screw it up, but it needs to be two people to fix it, because if there's some problems and the other partner isn't willing to, no matter how much you try and change, or how many things you do, it's not going to matter. And sometimes, um, like for my ex, he didn't want to be in a family. It was just the reality that he didn't want to be part of a family unit anymore. He wanted freedom. There's no way that I can fix that. That was not a problem with me, because the only thing I was doing was being part of a family, a wife and a mother, and he had his son. There was nothing I can do to fix that. But I took that all on a failure of myself. And you fast forward, he never had any more kids. He never got married again. So realistically, it wasn't a me thing. It really was a him thing that I couldn't fix. But all I saw was, I failed. I suck. I'm terrible. And so it's really about how you reframe your situation and how you see it and how you beat yourself up about it. So what I started to do, like I mentioned, was that when I started to journal and I started to analyze myself, and if I would say ugly things to myself, I would catch it and be like, no, why am I saying that? I would write it out. And when I would write it out, I would recognize where it was coming from, which really was just nonsense. Just it was an easy way out of explaining a problem. It's just like, well, you just suck. No, there's more to it. Let's figure it out. Let's do the work. Many of us don't do the work. We're like, okay, we got a husband, we got a partner, we got a whatever. Now we just live life. So, when I was my strongest was the day, and I'm not going to say that exact day, but it is a day that stands out to me because the day that I met my now current partner, like I said, I was at the theme parks with with my dad and whatever. And I just remember having a moment then and saying, I'm happy with my life. I love my
Mhm.
life. I am not just content, but I have joy. And the reason I remember having that thought on that day is because, 20 minutes later, I open up my phone and I see that this person sends me a message and says, "Hey, I'd like to, I saw your photo. I'd like to talk to you and whatever." And that turned out to be my new partner. But the fact that I had come to a place of so much peace, that is, where I can recognize and say, I got to where I wanted to get, right? It, of course, you continue to stay there. You got to work to stay there. It doesn't just stay unless you do the effort. But that's kind of how the moment that I can kind of pinpoint.
Okay, nice. And do you tie that into spiritual? How does that tie into your spiritual self?
Well, I mean, I grew up Catholic, so I do have a lot of faith in God and Virgin Mary. I'm not like a practicing Catholic, but I still have the faith of God, and I have my own conversations and my own um, relationship with God, and I do feel that absolutely He was watching how I was trying to rebuild and live my life, and because I was trying to do it in a good way, a healthy way, not beating myself up or mistreating myself or putting myself in bad situations, um, things continue to be moving in an upward positive trajectory.
Yeah. What are some of your self love rituals, and how do you still put your self love routines and habits today?
Okay, sure. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to take little trips, vacations, staycations. I will treat myself even in my relationship now, and I have a daughter. Um, I would in the past feel super guilty to, leave um, my daughter with her dad and go away on a girls trip for a weekend, because wow, why would you do such a thing? You're a mom and a wife. And I'm like, nope, I don't do it all the time. We do a yearly girls trip, and I will take it because I deserve to be myself, unwind. I know my daughter's getting fed. I know that he takes good care of her, and they're going to be okay. So that is one of the big things that I like to do. I also will, go get my nails done, go get a massage, go sit in a park, or go to a restaurant by myself and enjoy a nice lunch and read a book or play on my phone. Just have some me time. Remember that I can enjoy being alone, that it's okay to be alone. And so that's one of the big things. And journaling, I still journal. I love to journal. It's very helpful and it clears your mind when you're stressed and worried about things.
Yeah, nice. Okay. And what inspires you these days?
Well, my podcast really does inspire me a lot. I that is basically a lot where my focus is, my podcast and my business. I'm, always making social media uh, things for it. I'm trying to do videos. I try to do posts. I try to come up with what to talk about. I've given myself more work because I try to do 2 episodes a week now. I just want to have information there for women in anything that they can think of. I want them to be able to refer back to my podcast and find an answer. So just helping women, because it was such a terrible part of my life. It feels like a death. It's one of the most, I'm not sure if I can say the statistic right, but it kind of, separation, divorce feels like a death. Um, and so it's really difficult. And when you don't know how to get through it and you don't have the support, it makes it, 10 times harder. So that's what I love. That's my passion.
Yeah. And what legacy would you like to leave behind?
Well, I would love to help as many women as I can be able to say, to have me, and not even in my name, just I remember reading from somebody or hearing from this person or listening to a podcast that taught me this, that flipped a switch for me here, that helped me get through this really dark time. I don't even need them to say my name. I just want to be able to have helped in the journey. And hopefully, also, I have a daughter now. So I want her to see and learn from what I went through and what I teach women so that she doesn't ever have to experience it, because she's well aware of who she is. And, not everything's going to be perfect. There's like always going to be bad relationships, but if she sees a red flag early and gets the heck out of there, I've done my job.
Yeah. Very good. And if Josie, where can we find you if they want to know more?
Absolutely. So I have a website, which is josiefalcone.com. I am on TikTok as Josie Falcone. I am on Instagram at josie.falcone. And so pretty much all over social media. Of course, the podcast, From Devastated to Divorced, you can find it anywhere you stream. So all those places. And if there's any women that want to know more, I wanted to offer your listeners the opportunity for a free chapter checklist. It goes over the 5 chapters that I mentioned, from devastated to divorce, to see what chapter they might be struggling with or living in currently. And I can give you that link if you wanted to share it.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Okay. And you can say it. I'll put it on my bio as well.
Right. So it's actually on josiefalcone.com. You can as soon as you go to that website, it's right on the top. You just click the link and it'll take you to sign up for the free chapter checklist.
Okay. And on that free chapter checklist, what
Mhm.
is your favorite that you go by, or the
Well, the
best one?
checklist is actually, the way it works is that you find out what chapter you're living in, right? So my favorite would be the last one, because that means you've gone through all the stress and drama of your journey. So that it's more to be able to pinpoint where it's a roadmap, so you know where you're going during your journey, and so you can see where you are. So it's not exactly, I'm not going to say it's not positive, it's more informative, right?
Okay. Okay. So check out the ebook. Was it an ebook?
It's just it's a checklist. Yeah.
Okay. A
A
checklist
printable.
to
Yeah.
find out where you guys are. Is there anything else you would like to leave with our listeners today?
I would just like to say that no matter if you are not dealing with separation or divorce or anything like that, that it's still so important to check in with yourself to see where you are on your self worth. Are you questioning it? Do you feel secure in yourself? If not, there's no harm in starting that work today because it can only enhance your relationship and your life when you actually value yourself.
Yeah, very good. Awesome. I thank you so much for being on the podcast today and with all the great gems that you have dropped. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much
Yep.
for letting me come on. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, and it was amazing having you. Thank you.